My name is Alma. I'm standing on the stage of the school gym, the weight of the quiet room pressing down on me. The fluorescent lights above are blinding, and the sound of my last note hangs heavily in the air. I can hardly believe what just happened. A moment ago, the room was filled with the most thunderous applause I've ever heard. Teachers were on their feet, students who once laughed at me were cheering, and tears streamed down my teacher, Ms. Thompson's face. And then there was the man, Mr. Henry, a well-known local music producer. He'd climbed onto the stage, told me I had a gift, and that I deserved to be protected. But it wasn't always like this. I grew up in a small, run-down apartment above an all-night diner. The constant hum of the deep fryer and the chatter of late-night customers were the soundtrack of my childhood. My parents worked long, hard hours. My dad was a mechanic, always coming home covered in grease, and my mom was a waitress, her feet sore from standing all day. They loved me, but money was tight. I've loved music for as long as I can remember. One day, I found an old, beaten-up guitar in an alley. It was missing a couple of strings and the paint was peeling, but I knew I had to have it. I took it home and, with a bit of wire and a lot of determination, I fixed it up. It wasn't pretty, but it was mine. When the school announced the annual Lincoln Middle Talent Show, I taped the flyer to the fridge. I told my mom casually, "I think I might do it." She looked at me with those worried eyes of hers. "Alma, those kids can be tough."
"You know that," she said gently.
I just shrugged. "I won't know unless I try." In the days leading up to the show, our apartment became a rehearsal space. I practiced during every free moment between my homework and dinner. My voice would crack, and the chords would sometimes sound off, but I kept going. Mom found a second-hand dress at a local charity shop. It was a bit too big and had a small stain on the hem, but when I put it on and twirled around, I said, "This is perfect." The night before the show, Mom sat on my bed while I tuned my guitar. "Are you nervous?"
she asked.
I gave her a small smile. "A little, but Ms. Thompson says I don't need everything to be perfect to be great." Mom just nodded, but I could tell she was still worried. The day of the show arrived. The gym was packed, filled with the excitement of the students and the proud parents. Kids were dressed in their finest clothes, and the air was thick with the smell of hairspray and perfume. I stood beside Mom, holding my guitar case tightly. My shoes, borrowed from my little cousin, were a bit too small, but I held my head high. When my name was called, I squeezed Mom's hand and whispered, "I'll be okay." I walked onto the stage alone. The gym went quiet, but it wasn't a good kind of quiet. I could hear the whispers from the front rows. "Look at her," someone snickered. "This should be a disaster." The laughter spread like wildfire, but I kept walking. My guitar felt huge in my small arms, but I reached the mic stand and adjusted it like I'd practiced. I took a deep breath and struck the first chord. It was a bit off, and more giggles erupted from the bleachers. My heart sank, but I didn't give up. I adjusted the tuning peg and tried again. This time, the chord was better, but the laughter didn't stop. I started to sing, and my voice cracked on the first line. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, but I forced myself to keep going. Verse by verse, I found my rhythm. The crowd quieted down, not out of respect, but because they were confused. I sang about our small apartment, the smell of the diner below, and the dreams that seemed so far away. Something in the room started to change. I could see Ms. Thompson in the front row, leaning forward, a tear running down her cheek. But just as I reached the chorus, disaster struck. The microphone started to screech with feedback, blaring through the speakers. The spell was broken, and the laughter came back, louder and crueler than before. I froze, my fingers trembling on the strings. I thought I might break right then and there. I could see Mom in the back, her hands gripping the railing, her face full of worry. I wanted to run off the stage and into her arms, but something held me back. I stared at the floor, trying to gather my courage. The MC looked unsure, glancing at the judges' table. One of the judges started to stand up, maybe to end my performance. But then I lifted my head. I looked at the microphone and said softly, "Sorry, I can start over." The room went quiet, waiting to see what I would do next. I adjusted the strap on my guitar, took a deep breath, and struck the strings again. This time, the sound was clear. I began to sing from the start, my voice stronger with each word. I sang about the late-night shifts my parents worked, the sacrifices they made for me, and my promise to myself that I would make it. The truth in my song filled the gym like a warm, comforting blanket. The kids who had laughed earlier were now sitting in silence, listening intently. By the time I reached the end, I felt a new kind of strength. And then there was that man, Mr. Henry, in the back row. He stood up slowly, his eyes fixed on me. "Play it again," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. At first, no one moved. The principal looked confused, and some students whispered in surprise. But Mr. Henry didn't budge. From the top, "You were finding your truth. Don't stop now," he said. I nodded, not to him exactly, but to myself. I lifted my guitar, and this time, when I started to play, there was no more fear. My voice soared, and the room was filled with a power that I never felt before. When the song ended, the applause was deafening. I couldn't believe my ears. Mom met me halfway down the aisle, her eyes full of pride. I buried my head in her shoulder, still shaking. Mr. Henry walked up to me, a kind smile on his face. "You have a gift, Alma, and I want to help you develop it," he said. He handed me a business card. "Come to my studio this week. Let's record that song properly." As we left the gym that night, students who had once mocked me came up to me, offering apologies and compliments. Outside, the cool night air felt refreshing on my face. I held my guitar case close to my chest, feeling like a different person. In the car on the way home, I asked Mom, "Did that really happen?" She smiled at me. "Yes, it did, Alma. And you know what? You were never the poor girl they thought you were. They just couldn't see your light before." I leaned my head against the window, humming the melody of my song. It sounded different now, full of hope and possibility. And I knew that from that day on, my life would never be the same. Over the next week, I went to Mr. Henry's studio. It was a small, cluttered space above a coffee shop, filled with old records and musical equipment. The air smelled like coffee and cigarette smoke. I sat in front of the microphone, my guitar on my lap. Mr. Henry adjusted the stand and said, "Just sing it like you did that night. Don't aim for perfection. Aim for honesty." I took a deep breath and began to sing. The sound that came out was softer, but it held a quiet confidence. Every imperfection in my voice added to the truth of the song. When I finished, Mr. Henry was silent for a moment. Then he said, "That's it. That's exactly what I was looking for." That same evening, we uploaded the song online. Within days, messages started pouring in. People from all over were telling me how much my song had touched them. They said it made them cry, that it reminded them of their own struggles, and the power of hope. I didn't brag. I just smiled and thought to myself, guess people really do listen when it's real. The next year, when the talent show came around, I didn't participate. I was too busy writing new songs, songs full of the hope and strength that I discovered within myself. Years later, I was invited back to Lincoln Middle to speak at an assembly. I walked onto the stage, this time with a brand new guitar in my hands, but still wearing that same quiet smile. The banners on the walls had faded, and the bleachers were a bit more scuffed, but the air was filled with a different kind of energy. After I performed, I turned to the students and said, "Be brave, even when people try to put you down. You are stronger than you think." My voice filled the room, calm and unshakable. I saw tears in Mom's eyes, the same kind of tears that had filled them on the night of the talent show. I signed my name on the backstage wall, just like all the other performers before me. Then I handed the marker to a shy girl holding a borrowed flute. "You can do it," I told her. "Just be yourself." Looking back on that night, I realized that courage isn't always about being the best or having the most. It's about standing up for what you believe in, even when the world around you tries to tear you down. And in the end, the world will stop and listen.